host, The Stephen A. Smith Show, starts right now.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Dan Grassa sitting in for Stephen A. Smith here on The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. 888-SAY-ESPN is the telephone number, 888-729-3776. And we are presented by Progressive Insurance, celebrating 7 years and over 700 cars donated to vets. Learn more at keys2progress.com. We got ourselves a busy program here. Tim Kirchin, ESPN baseball analyst, going to join us coming up at 1:30 because, after all, we got Game 6 of the World Series tonight. After a day off, Nationals, Astros, scene shifts back down to Houston, and the trophy is going to be in the building tonight as the Astros look to see if they can carry that momentum from sweeping the 3 games in the nation's capital and take it with them back down to their ballpark for their second World Series title in 3 years. We'll be all over that here this afternoon. We'll also talk to our pal Paul Feinbaum. Little college football is we have now kind of turned the page, and we have finished up the October portion of the college football schedule. This Saturday, you got the first November Saturday. That's when teams start to make their move towards jockeying for position for the college football playoff, maybe even conference championship games and so on and so forth. So Mr. Feinbaum going to join us in studio coming up at 2 o'clock. But as always, it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. And if you want to hit me up on Twitter, feel free to do so at Dan Grassa, Graca. And look, I think this World Series has really been fascinating. I do. And before, we'll get into the football from last night, too, with the Steelers taking care of business, beating the Miami Dolphins, which you would expect them to do. Dolphins still can't seem to put 4 quarters together, even though they got off to a 14-0 lead. Meant nothing for them in the long run. But as far as this World Series is concerned, momentum in sports is such a fleeting thing. And even when you're talking about a 7-game series like this, because once we played those first 2 games last week down in Houston, and the Nationals took games 1 and 2, and now they were in the driver's seat, and now they were going back to their ballpark. And if you looked at how they disposed of the St. Louis Cardinals in the NLCS, you thought that this team is not only playing like a juggernaut, and they're firing on all cylinders, but they're due. And that's what I've been saying about this Nationals team really all month. They're due. They're finally supposed to get over the hump and win something significant, despite the fact that they've had all this talent and maybe come up short once October rolled around in the past. But not this time. Well, we had a day off in the World Series. We get up to the nation's capital, and then all of a sudden, things got reversed. The Astros find a way to get Game 3. They have the bullpen game in Game number 4. Jose Urquidy was outstanding, and the rest of the relief corps fell in line. Then he went out there on Sunday, and you had Garrett Cole revert back to the Garrett Cole that we've seen all season long pretty much. And just like that, in a span of 3 games and 27 innings, now the Houston Astros are in the driver's seat, and they look like the unstoppable team here. Now, look, the series isn't over yet. If you're a Nationals fan, you should still have hope. And every guy in that clubhouse is still preaching like, hey, we can do this. It's not impossible to get back in the series because you got a guy going tonight who you should feel pretty confident in Steven Strasburg. But just like that, the Astros now are reminding people why they were pretty much the odds-on favorite all season long. And the thing that would give you confidence if you're an Astros fan, not just because you have a fallback game in your pocket. Like if you don't get it done tonight, you still have Game 7 tomorrow in your building. See, this is Game 7 tonight for the Nationals. They need to win this game. Astros would like to win it, but they don't need to win it. This team was the best home team in baseball all season long. They won 60 games. It was shocking that they dropped the first 2 in this series in their ballpark. And that's why, as a baseball observer, I'm looking at this game tonight, and I say to myself, are the Houston Astros actually going to lose 3 consecutive games in their building? Now, granted, you had like a week in between. It wasn't 1, 2, 3 on consecutive days. But can you really see the Astros falling short like this? 3 consecutive games? I don't know. And you have Justin Verlander going tonight, who, if not Garrett Cole, then Justin Verlander is going to be your Cy Young winner in the American League. But the World Series has not always been kind to Justin Verlander. Okay, it hasn't been kind to him in 2019, and it hasn't been kind to him in his previous stops too, both with the Houston Astros a couple of years ago, and then before that, the Detroit Tigers. Okay, this is going to be his 7th start in the World Series. And the numbers aren't good. They're downright ugly. 0-5 with an ERA nearing 6. And for a guy who's as accomplished as JV is, and a guy who's going to the Hall of Fame, and as I said, might win some more hardware this season with a Cy Young Award, the guy that you're seeing on the mound in the month of October has not been the guy that we watched all season long. And look, there's a couple of reasons for that, probably, right? There's a couple of things there. Number one, you talk about the workload that Justin Verlander puts forward pretty much on a yearly basis. The guy logs a lot of innings. The guy takes the baseball every 5 days. Secondly, he's 36 years old. And I don't have to remind anybody that as you get older, as you get up there, you know what? You're not going to feel the same. You're not going to respond the right way. I don't know about you, but when I wake up in the morning, I feel like garbage half the time. Garbage. And I know these are professional athletes and this is what they do and whatnot, but you know what? If you're that age and you've thrown X amount of pitches in your career, sometimes you only have that many bullets in the arm that you're going to be able to deliver at such a high rate. And that's why if you are the Washington Nationals, because all great pitchers have this in their DNA, and it's a characteristic of theirs, and it's an old saying when it comes to baseball. When you're facing the great pitcher, you want to get to him early. You want to do the damage early. And you know what? The first inning hasn't always been kind to Verlander, certainly at least this month. You know, you think back in the ALCS, the game he started at Yankee Stadium on that Friday night. What was that? Game 5 against the New York Yankees. Got touched up for 4 runs, gave up the big 3-run blast to Aaron Hicks there in the first inning. But then he settled down after that. And then he was able to at least gut out 7 innings for the Astros and minimize the wear and tear on the bullpen. But he got touched up early, and that was good enough for the Yankees to win the game. If you're the Nationals, you want to do the same thing tonight. You want to strike early because the great ones get better and better and better as the game wears on. They settle in. They find a groove. That's what Verlander, in all likelihood, is probably going to do again tonight. And the same thing goes for Steven Strasburg. Because really, all the hopes, dreams, whatever you want to call it for Washington, rest on that young man's right arm. And Steven Strasburg, you know what? I'm happy for the guy. I really am. Because this is someone that really has kind of reauthored the narrative on his career and how it's perceived. You know, for whatever the reason, Steven Strasburg was a guy who earned a reputation as being soft. Right? That he wasn't durable. That he wasn't a guy that you can count on. You know, this is a former number 1 overall pick in the draft, guy who had a world of potential, huge expectations. Remember his much ballyhooed debut when he finally got called up in 2010 there for the Nationals? And then you had that episode there a couple of years later where the Nationals, thinking about his best interest long-term, decided to shut him down right in the middle of a pennant race. And he wasn't available for them as they tried to embark on a World Series, and they get picked off in the playoffs again. But that wasn't Strasburg's call. That was the team's call. You had that episode a couple of years ago when they were playing the Chicago Cubs in the playoffs where we got word that night that, you know, Steven Strasburg is iffy to make the start the next day because he's got the sniffles or he's got a cold or whatever it was that he was nursing at the hotel room. You know, word got out. He came out there, and the next day he pitched a fantastic game, an absolutely phenomenal baseball game, and he saved the Washington Nationals, which would have been an elimination situation. Top notch. And if you go back now and you see what this guy has done, not only has he given you a career best in terms of workload in 2019 and taken the ball when the Nationals have needed it, this is a guy who has developed into a money pitcher in postseason. And fairly or unfairly, a lot of guys get judged on that. A lot of guys get judged on what they do when the stakes are at its best and at its highest. You know, Verlander's an all-time great pitcher here. Guy's going to the Hall of Fame. But we just talked about the struggles he's had in the World Series. Steven Strasburg, even though the Nationals maybe as a team have fallen short in the past, you look at what he has done individually, he's been outstanding in the postseason. Absolutely top-notch, first-rate. And that's why I would have all the confidence in the world giving him the baseball tonight. Maybe even more so than Max Scherzer. Even when Max, before he went down with this, you know, the neck spasms and whatnot that forced him to miss Game 5, and who knows about his availability if there is a Game 7. We'll talk to Tim Kirkchin about that coming up here in just a little bit. But I would have full confidence in Steven Strasburg tonight. What I don't have confidence in is when is somebody from the Washington Nationals going to get a big hit to turn the tide of this series? Because that's really been the difference here. This is what has cost this baseball team. The fact that they have scored only 3 runs in the last 3 games, 3 runs in their ballpark, 1 for 21 with runners in scoring position. I mean, you would think by accident you would be able to bust through one of these days. And it just hasn't happened. The Astros are out pitching the Washington Nationals here. And yes, it goes back to the good pitching will beat the good hitting. I know it's cliche. I know to some it might seem tired, but that's exactly what's happening here. Washington is getting their opportunities. They're getting their chances, even against Garrett Cole, for crying out loud. It goes back to getting one of these pitchers early. Second inning on Sunday night, the Nationals had an opportunity there. They had leadoff singles in the second inning by Juan Soto and Howie Kendrick. You had first and third with nobody out. And what does Garrett Cole do? He bears down. He gets Zimmerman striking out. And then he gets Robles to ground into a 6-4-3, and he's out of the inning, and he's out of trouble. Somebody's got to break through for this baseball team. And I'll start with Anthony Rendon. Anthony Rendon, who was the #1 run producer in the National League during the year. #1. And who is a phenomenal player. Play for my team any day of the week. And he is going to make a fortune in free agency here in a couple of months. You know, he might sign a $200 million contract. That's how good the guy is. But he's been nowhere to be found in this series. Nowhere to be found. And these are the guys that you look to. You know, he's the guy that is supposed to take the team on his back and say, all right, guys, follow me. You know, Trey Turner, setting the table at the top of the order. Where's that been? Even somebody like Howie Kendrick, who got so many big hits in the last round against the St. Louis Cardinals. When is he maybe going to find that magic again and deliver a big knock? What I would do if I'm the Washington Nationals, if I'm Dave Martinez for this game tonight, just because you're struggling so much offensively here, I maybe then look to get a guy who has been my best hitter of late in Juan Soto. I maybe see if I could sneak him up a little bit in that lineup from the cleanup hole. Just get him an extra at bat. You know, is it the worst thing in the world if you're going to bat him, let's say, 2? Or you want to move him up to 3, maybe Rendon to 2, something like that? Just get Juan Soto more opportunities because he seems like he's the one guy who hasn't been fazed by this whole thing. But it's been an odd World Series. It really has. I mean, the road team winning all 5 games, which is really strange as I go back to the Astros again, being the best home team in baseball this year and winning 60 games. You know, are we finally going to have that breakthrough? There has never been a team, and if you're a Nationals fan, there has never been a team that has won a World Series without winning a single game in their home ballpark. And that's what the Nationals are going to be forced to do here if they want to hoist that trophy. They got to get the next 2 in Houston, which means they didn't win any at Nationals Park. I'd be confident tonight in Strasburg. I'd be confident tonight, too, if I'm Verlander. And the Nationals have to go all in tonight. They have to empty the tank. Anybody available, anybody in a uniform, you got to be ready to go. You worry about Game 7 if you get to Game 7, because if you don't get 6, then Game 7 means absolutely nothing. A.J. Hinch doesn't have to manage the game that way. Okay, he doesn't have to manage the game that way. I thought it was a brilliant stroke that he had on Sunday night when he put Yordan Alvarez back in the lineup. Started him in left field, by the way. This is a guy who's a designated hitter and who's kind of been struggling for the most part here in the postseason. You know, to reward him with that faith, going up against the righty and have him hit a big home run, have him go 3 for 3. I mean, the guy made 9 starts in left field all year. And he goes out there and he makes the manager look smart. Now you get the designated hitter back playing in the American League ballpark. You got to feel good about that whole thing. And I know that a lot has come out, too, over the last couple of days with the whole episode involving Lance Barksdale, home plate umpire. And mostly the people on the National side have kind of been chirping a little bit behind the scenes because, you know, why not? They're the ones that have lost the last 3 games, right? They're the ones that haven't had calls go their way. And because of that, you look for any excuse. You look for any reason. So because you had that dust up there with Yan Gomes and the home plate umpire, and all right, you never like to hear stories like that. You never want to hear the fact that, all right, it was a strike, but because the catcher jumped up out of his crouch and his stance too soon and decided to run off the field, that set the home plate umpire off and said, no, it's a ball because you kind of showed me up in a way. You can't do that. But you also can't sit there if you're Washington and use that as an excuse and say, that is why we're losing. You're losing, and you're one loss away from hibernation because, as I just said, you scored 3 runs the last 3 games in your building. 1 for 21 runners in scoring position. That's why you're about to possibly be extinct. It's not the home plate umpire. That, to me, is a bunch of garbage. But it does continue to spur the conversation about whether or not we are headed one day to automated umpires. You know, people want to come up with this robot umpire nonsense, or at least something up in the booth to where you're going to be able to double check, or the calls are going to be coming in electronically to where it was a strike, it was not a strike, and just to have a little bit more reinforcement for the umpire. Are we headed to that one day? Yeah, probably. Some sort of a backup system, but I don't think we're ever going to be removing human beings known as umpires away from the playing field. I don't think that's going to happen. You know, umpires are as much as about baseball and are as much a part of baseball as there is. It's not happening. And, you know, when it comes to replay, and we've talked about this so much, too, when it comes to the NFL, football, even now in basketball, I don't think more replay is the answer. I really and truly don't. You know, case in point last night in that in the Monday Night Football game, you know, instant replay, you could go back and look at it 15 different ways on video. And the Deontay Johnson garbage offensive pass interference call last night, which might have wiped out a touchdown there. I mean, how many times you got to go back and look at that? And the 2 guys were hand jockeying down the field and whatnot, but there was no real, in my opinion, evident push-off to where it was so egregious to where you had to throw the flag and keep the flag and enforce the penalty there. I mean, that's why you can have replay, but yet when they go and take a second look at it, they're still not seeing it the way that they should. So, not more replay. That's not the answer. It's the guys that you entrusted, that you put in position to do the job, whether it's umpires, whether it's referees. It's incumbent upon those guys to just do their job better. How about that? Just do your job better. I don't think that's asking for too much. You're hired to do it. You're put in a position. It's a lot of authority. It's an important position. Just do it better. You're going to miss a call every now and then. You're human beings. It's the human element. Because I don't know about you. Do you like watching these games where you have to stop every 10 minutes and then go have a replay review, which just grinds the game to a halt? You had that other one at the end of the third quarter last night with the Ryan Fitzpatrick 4th down scramble, where they placed the ball. Did he get it? Did he not get it? Did he get it? Did he not get it? I mean, especially when it comes to baseball, guys. I mean, do we really need to have 4-hour, 9-inning games? 4 hours. You know what the great thing is, like in the month of October, where we are on the sports calendar, at least for baseball, this is usually World Series time, of course. So like over the last few days, every single one of the days, something pops up on Twitter or whatnot where they remind you on this date in 1986, on this date in 1991, and all these great classic moments that happened in the World Series from way back when. So I go back and I look at some of these games and I check out the box scores and whatnot, whether it was, you know, the Bill Buckner game in 86 with the Mets, whether it's the, you know, the Kirby Puckett walk-off game 6 with the Twins and the Bravos there at the old Homer Dome. We're talking about extra inning games in those years. Extra inning games that still were played faster than even 9-inning World Series games are happening now. And what do you think the reason is for that? You know? And maybe the replay in baseball isn't as egregious or frequent as it is in football. I think that's clear. But we still got to do something to speed these games up. I mean, 4 hours? It took 2.5 hours in that one game over the weekend, 2.5 hours to play 5 innings. 5 stinking innings. What are we doing here? It shouldn't take this long. And you wonder when you see these reports and you see all this stuff about, well, the ratings for this World Series aren't great. Oh, you know, these are the lowest rated first 2 games of the World Series or whatever it is, you know, in quite some time. Yeah, you know why? Because if you sit down to watch the game at 8 o'clock, you could be all geeked up for the World Series. All right, Nats, Astros, I'm there. You got the popcorn, you got the drink, you're ready to go. And then after 2 hours, it's 10 o'clock at night and they're still in the 3rd inning and you're wondering what's going on here. You got to wake up early the next day, go to work. You can't make it. They got to do something to speed up this game. Give me something. I'm a fool. I could stay up late because it's what I do. You know, I'm supposed to watch these games. But for the casual fan or even the diehard baseball fan who wants to watch these games, but he's got to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go to work. He can't afford to be staying up and watching these games past midnight. I mean, it's the World Series, for crying out loud. It's supposed to be the pinnacle of the sport. That was Straight Talk Wireless. Everything for less. Only at Walmart. But I'm into this tonight. I can't wait. Strasburg, Verlander. And to be fair, and you could grill me if I'm wrong, but I'll just say it right now. And you could roll the tape tomorrow if I'm wrong. I don't care. But after game number 3, when we were going into game 4 over the weekend, I said that if the Astros win that game Saturday night and even it up at 2-2, then they're just going to continue on and win 4 straight and take this in 6. So I think the Astros are going to win this one tonight, get back in the win column at home, and hoist that trophy for the second time in 3 years. And if I'm wrong, bring the tape out tomorrow, guys. I can take it. But right now, I don't see this Nationals team snapping out of this thing, at least not down in that ballpark. Tim Kirchin is going to join us coming up in just a few minutes. Talk a little bit more about this World Series. We'll do some college football in hour number 2 with Paul Feinbaum, who joins me in studio. And we got all the NFL stuff, too, with the trade deadline coming up in just under 3 hours from now here with the National Football League. By now, you probably heard me talk about my computer career and think, nope, not me. I don't know the first thing about